Josephine counties are moving to moderate fire danger this Saturday.
Turning now to wildfire season as we're tracking the first big fire of 2025.
Fire crews in our area continue to fight 3 major fires in our viewing area.
You want to know the truth about wildfires in Southern Oregon? Well, you're not alone. This is actually one of the most frequently asked questions I get from folks who are considering relocating to Southern Oregon cities like Medford, Ashland, and Grants Pass. They want to know, how bad is the smoke? Do you have to spend all summer indoors? Is fire insurance affordable? Can you even get it? Is my house going to burn down? That's a true story. I actually got that question. I went and analyzed 10 years worth of data for air quality in Medford and in Grants Pass, looking at every single day from 2014 all the way through 2024. And what I found is absolutely shocking, to say the least. I'm going to tell you exactly how many days of smoke you can expect in the summer. I'm going to tell you which parts of Southern Oregon have the best and the worst air quality. I'm going to tell you all about fire insurance, and I'm going to tell you how the air quality here in Southern Oregon compares to all the other parts of the Western United States. Let's go ahead and dive right in. First off, how bad is it really? Lots of people call me and they say they heard the summers are smoked in for weeks on end. You have to wear a mask and on and on and on. Well, let me say this. I know people who have moved here and who have turned right around and left because of the smoke. And that can be insanely costly, number one. It can be super inconvenient, and it can even be a little embarrassing. And I obviously don't want to let any of that happen to you. So let me go ahead and tell you the facts so you can go ahead and decide for yourself if these other folks were just being dramatic or if they were justified in deciding to cut bait and go back to where they came from. In an average summer in Southern Oregon, you can expect between 8 to 10 days of unhealthy or worse air quality in Southern Oregon, and that's categorized by the EPA. And you can expect another few days throughout the year if we're having a particularly bad inversion or there's some sort of prescribed burns going on or something like that. But let's go ahead and focus primarily on the summer, which is driven primarily by wildfires, and that's what we're here to talk about in this video. But 8 to 10 days is a 10-year average based on air quality data from the US EPA, and you can go ahead and validate that by checking their website. So is that worth moving away from? You get to make that decision, but before you do, you're going to want to hear me out because this next point could be the one that provides the information that could sway you one way or the other. It could make it or break it completely for you. And that is fire insurance. Can you get it? Is it affordable? Well, to put it simply, no, you actually can't get it. But it's not because of why you think, okay? You can't get fire insurance because it's actually not a thing in Oregon. In Oregon, your homeowner's insurance covers wildfire, and you do not need a separate policy for wildfire like you would in somewhere like California. So you can't technically get wildfire insurance because it's not a thing, at least that I'm aware of. And maybe you can get some sort of additional rider or something like that, but your homeowner's policy covers wildfires in Oregon, and that's the key point that you need to know. It is generally affordable though, with policies averaging around $200 to $300 per month for the typical rural setting home, from what I've seen, okay? And that's a fraction of what I've heard people paying in somewhere like California, again, for example. But that being said, there are some situations where it is difficult to get coverage. For example, if you have a home with, in a really rural location that's 10 miles or more from a fire station, and maybe it has a bunch of trees surrounding it, or it's on sloped terrain or something to that effect. But even in those situations, I've only had one house I remember that my clients were not able to find a company who is willing to insure it. So it's pretty rare, and it only comes into play if you're looking at those really remote locations. So that's the worst case scenario, right? Well, speaking of that worst case scenario, let's go ahead and talk about that for smoke in Southern Oregon. So the question is, what is the worst we've ever seen here, right? What's the worst case scenario you can expect? Well, I've lived here in Southern Oregon for over 30 years, and I remember some pretty bad fire years, like in 2002 when the Biscuit Fire burned 500,000 acres near Cave Junction. So bad that President Bush at the time even came to Southern Oregon and toured the damage so he could see it firsthand. Okay, and that is kind of what put us on the map in regards to wildfire, and I think that was the origin of a lot of these reputations that we're getting about wildfire in Southern Oregon. So as a top producing realtor for years here in Southern Oregon, my team and I have helped hundreds of folks buy and sell real estate in Southern Oregon, and many of them want to know this information so that they understand what they're getting themselves into. So if there's anything like this that you would like to know about Southern Oregon, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can call, text, or email me. I'm Brian Simmons with the Buying Southern Oregon Real Estate Team, and I'd be more than happy to talk to you in detail about your situation and answer the specific questions that you have about this area. Now, the worst case scenario again, the worst year that we have seen in the last decade was in 2020, which is surprising surprisingly not the year of the Alameda fire that burned over 2,000 structures in Southern Oregon, okay? That wasn't actually a typical wildfire either, as it burned through the towns of Phoenix and Talent back in 2001. But back to 2020, which was the worst summer we had seen in the last decade, okay? We saw a stretch of 19 days in a row of unhealthy air quality, and that was fueled by the Dixie and Caldor fires in Northern California, so thank you, California, for that. But it was an outlier for sure, okay? The wind blew just in the wrong direction, pushing smoke here into the Rogue Valley, and it settled, and we had to deal with it for 19 days. But that is the worst stretch we've seen in the last decade. Other than that, we've only seen a handful of years where we experienced 7 or more days in a row, so a week or more, of unhealthy air quality. So what parts of Southern Oregon have the best and the worst air quality? Well, Medford and Grants Pass are actually the only two that we could look up data on because that's all the EPA reports on, but they're pretty highly correlated, measuring a 0.83, which in my mind means that they're 83% similar, okay? So that being said, the areas can experience different microclimates, and the wind can blow smoke into one while the other stays mostly clear. So for example, while Medford and Grants Pass average about the same number of unhealthy days per year, with 8 in Grants Pass and 10 in Medford, the data seems to indicate that Grants Pass experiences more breaks in the smoke, likely driven by, again, those local wind and weather patterns. So for example, Grants Pass had only 4 streaks of a week or more of unhealthy air quality, whereas Medford had 8 streaks of a week or more over the last decade, okay? And the longest streak in Medford was those 19 days, while in Grants Pass they experienced only 16 days in a row. And it was actually a different year that Medford experienced the 19. So again, they can be very different, but overall, when you look at the whole 10 years, it tends to be relatively similar. So if you're looking for a slight edge in air quality, Grants Pass is going to provide that according to data for the last 10 years. And Grants Pass is also going to provide a slight edge in terms of affordability if you're looking for a home, but we can talk more about that when you give me a call. But looking at Grants Pass versus Medford on the air quality, are we really just talking about the lesser of two evils here? How do those actually compare to other parts of the Western United States? Well, I'm glad you asked. The reality of what the data shows is that Southern Oregon's air quality is better than Bakersfield, California, Porterville, California, Riverside in Ontario, Los Angeles, Fresno, Phoenix, Scottsdale, and Mesa, Arizona, Sacramento and Roseville, California, and Boise, Idaho, to name a few on the West Coast, okay? And all of those cities average more unhealthy days per year than Southern Oregon cities like Medford, Ashland, and Grants Pass. And I think that's actually a good segue into the next point, which is instead of being so negative and talking about how bad the fires and the smoke are, let's kind of reframe this and talk about maybe how good it actually is. In regards to air quality, Medford and Grants Pass both average around 240 days of good air quality, plus another 70 or so more of moderate. So you can expect over 300 days a year to be totally fine for most of the population, which is anyone who is other than, the most sensitive people. And again, only around 10 days per year would the EPA categorize as unhealthy. I hear you right now, but what about all those Facebook comments I read about the horrible smoke in Southern Oregon? Are you saying they're liars? No, but I am saying they don't know the data, and lots of people have opinions on things, and some state them more strongly than others. This is actually similar in a lot of ways to homelessness in Southern Oregon. Now stick with me for a second, because I'm not going on a tangent. This is an important point, okay? Natives who have lived here for decades remember back in the 80s and the 90s when there were less wildfires going on, and they compare today to those good old days, which is similar to when it was very rare to see a homeless person in Medford, okay? Do you see homeless people in Medford now? Yeah, you definitely can, but is it a catastrophic issue that's gonna impact your daily life and should prevent you from moving here? Probably not, in my opinion. If you've driven through somewhere like Portland or Los Angeles or San Francisco, Seattle, Sacramento, Salem, Eugene, pretty much anywhere else on the West Coast, you would laugh at what the locals here are calling a homeless problem. My point is, it's a matter of perspective, okay? The wildfires are the same thing. It's worse now than it was in the 80s and 90s, but it's still significantly better than areas like Southern California. Plus, we don't have earthquakes. And I really apologize to all of Southern Oregon if I just jinxed this, so my bad. Again, I'm Brian Simmons with the Buying Southern Oregon Real Estate Team, and if you're considering moving to Southern Oregon or even Bend, Oregon, I would love to talk to you about the specifics of your situation and help you figure out if our beautiful area here will provide you with the lifestyle that you're looking for. So don't hesitate to reach out with a call, text, or email to me directly. I would love to hear from you. If you're not quite ready for that yet, make sure you check out our relocation guide, which you could download using the link in the description of this video. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.